been a bit of a shock. However much one tries to prepare oneself for something like this, it's still a dreadful shock, and we're still trying to come to terms with that. And it's
For years, Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, was seen as one of the monarchy's most trusted and discreet figures. She rarely sought headlines, avoided public feuds, and remained fiercely loyal to the institution. But behind palace walls, a storm was quietly gathering. Now, in a move that has left insiders stunned, Sophie has allegedly unveiled explosive evidence against senior palace officials. Evidence so serious that it threatens to expose years of hidden power struggles, secret decisions, and shocking betrayals. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. For decades, Sophie cultivated a reputation that few within royal circles could rival. While others found themselves drawn into controversy, she remained measured, disciplined, and unwavering in her support of the crown. That image of quiet loyalty became one of her greatest strengths. Palace staff trusted her. Senior royals respected her. Even critics of the monarchy often viewed her as one of the institution's most dependable figures. Yet according to growing whispers from inside royal circles, that calm exterior had been concealing a deep and growing concern. Something had changed, slowly at first, then all at once. Those closest to palace operations allegedly began noticing subtle differences in Sophie's behavior. Meetings that once followed predictable patterns suddenly became more private. Conversations grew shorter. Questions became more direct. Behind the scenes, there were reports of her seeking clarification on decisions that many had long accepted without challenge. At first, these moments appeared insignificant, but taken together, they suggested a woman who was no longer content to simply accept what she was being told. She was looking deeper, asking harder questions, and searching for answers that some powerful individuals reportedly hoped would remain hidden forever. As months passed, rumors began circulating among palace aides that Sophie had started holding discreet meetings away from official schedules. These gatherings were allegedly attended by a carefully selected group of trusted individuals, people known for their loyalty rather than their ambition. Nobody seemed certain what was being discussed, yet the secrecy surrounding those meetings created an atmosphere of growing unease. Every whispered conversation fueled another theory. Every unexplained schedule adjustment sparked another round of speculation. The uncertainty alone was enough to make some officials nervous. Then came reports that records, correspondence, and internal documents were quietly being assembled. No public announcement was made. No official explanation was offered. Yet stories spread that information was being gathered piece by piece, creating what some insiders described as a puzzle that had taken years to complete. The deeper those rumors traveled through palace corridors, the more uncomfortable certain figures allegedly became. What began as harmless curiosity was transforming into genuine concern. Concern soon became anxiety, and anxiety eventually became fear. The most startling part was not the existence of the alleged evidence itself, but the growing belief that Sophie had been preparing for this moment far longer than anyone realized. Some insiders claimed she had spent years observing patterns that others ignored. Others suggested she had quietly documented troubling developments while maintaining the appearance of complete loyalty. If those claims were true, then this was not a sudden act of rebellion. It was the culmination of a long and deeply personal journey, one shaped by difficult choices, silent frustrations, and a determination to uncover what she believed was the truth. As whispers intensified, attention reportedly shifted toward the highest levels of palace authority. The possibility that Sophie's evidence might implicate powerful senior officials sent shockwaves through royal circles. Suddenly, long-standing assumptions were being questioned. Trusted reputations were coming under scrutiny. And behind closed doors, some feared that revelations years in the making were finally approaching the surface. The atmosphere became heavier with every passing day, because one unsettling question continued to linger above all others. If Sophie was willing to risk everything by coming forward, What exactly had she discovered that made silence impossible? But what exactly pushed one of the monarchy's most loyal members towards such a dramatic and unprecedented move? The alleged evidence did not emerge overnight. According to insiders, its origins trace back to a discovery Sophie never expected to make. What began as a routine royal matter reportedly opened a door to something far more disturbing. Behind carefully crafted public appearances, she allegedly uncovered a pattern of decisions that raised troubling questions about who truly held power inside the palace and what lengths they would go to protect it. In the weeks following her growing suspicions, Sophie reportedly found herself drawn toward details that most people would have overlooked. What first appeared to be a minor inconsistency buried within palace records allegedly caught her attention during an otherwise ordinary review of internal matters. At first, she dismissed it as a clerical mistake. Institutions as large and complex as the monarchy were bound to have occasional errors. But something about this discrepancy refused to sit comfortably in her mind. The more she examined it, the more questions emerged, and the fewer answers seemed available. According to palace insiders, Sophie quietly began comparing records, dates, and decisions that had long escaped scrutiny. What she allegedly discovered was not a single irregularity, but a pattern. Small inconsistencies appeared connected to larger ones. Certain decisions seemed to follow unusual paths. Information that should have been readily available was reportedly difficult to trace. Each discovery deepened her unease. The dependable system she had trusted for years suddenly appeared far more complicated than she had ever imagined. At first, disbelief became her strongest defense. Those close to her claimed she actively searched for innocent explanations. She wanted to believe there was a misunderstanding. She wanted to believe that the institution she had defended throughout her life remained exactly as she thought it was. Yet every attempt to disprove her concerns allegedly led her back to the same unsettling conclusions. Instead of eliminating her doubts, further examination only strengthened them. The possibility that something was deeply wrong became harder to ignore. Unable to carry the burden alone, Sophie reportedly turned to a small circle of trusted allies. These were individuals chosen not for their influence but for their discretion. Conversations were said to take place quietly and carefully, away from the usual channels of palace communication. Even then, uncertainty dominated every discussion. Some urged caution. Others warned that pursuing the matter could have consequences beyond anything she anticipated. Yet no one could fully dismiss what appeared to be unfolding beneath the surface. As those private conversations continued, a painful conflict allegedly began taking shape within Sophie herself. Her loyalty to the monarchy was not merely professional, it was deeply personal. She had spent years supporting the institution through triumphs and crises alike. The idea that trusted figures might have been involved in questionable actions was difficult to accept. Yet another part of her felt an equally powerful responsibility. If troubling truths existed, could she justify remaining silent? That question reportedly followed her everywhere, becoming impossible to escape. The deeper she looked, the more the stakes appeared to grow. What had started as concern over a handful of records now seemed connected to decisions affecting far more than administrative procedures. The implications reached into relationships, authority, and the balance of power itself. According to some accounts, Sophie began to fear that exposing what she had uncovered could trigger turmoil unlike anything the palace had faced in years. But keeping silent carried its own consequences, and those consequences were becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Meanwhile, subtle signs allegedly suggested that certain officials were growing nervous. Conversations reportedly ended when unexpected people entered rooms. Questions were met with carefully measured responses. Long-standing confidence gave way to unusual caution. Whether these developments were coincidence or evidence of something larger remained unclear, but to Sophie, they reportedly reinforced the feeling that she was moving closer to something significant. What troubled her most was the realization that every answer seemed to reveal another layer beneath it. Rather than reaching a conclusion, Her investigation was pulling her deeper into a labyrinth of influence, secrecy, and unanswered questions. The more she uncovered, the clearer it became that this story was far bigger than any single decision or individual. As Sophie dug deeper, she reportedly discovered that the problem wasn't isolated, it pointed toward an entire network of influence operating behind closed doors. Every institution has its power brokers, but what Sophie allegedly uncovered painted a far darker picture than anyone imagined. According to explosive claims, a small group of senior palace officials may have been shaping decisions far beyond their official roles. The deeper she looked, the more she reportedly saw evidence of hidden influence, internal manipulation, and strategic efforts to control narratives before they ever reached the royal family itself. What had initially appeared to be a series of troubling irregularities was now evolving into something far more unsettling. As Sophie continued examining the threads connecting one discovery to another, she reportedly began encountering the same names repeatedly. These were not public figures who attracted media attention or members of the royal family whose every move was scrutinized. They were the individuals who operated in the shadows of the institution, trusted advisors, longtime administrators, and senior officials whose influence rarely became visible to the outside world. Yet according to growing allegations, their power may have extended much further than anyone realized. The deeper Sophie ventured into this hidden world, the more she allegedly discovered a culture built on quiet control rather than open authority. Officially, major decisions followed established procedures. Unofficially, however, there appeared to be another layer operating beneath the surface. Certain recommendations seemed to receive unusual priority. Some concerns reportedly disappeared before reaching key members of the royal family. Sensitive matters appeared carefully managed long before they could become subjects of debate. Individually, these incidents might have seemed insignificant. Together, they suggested a system designed to influence outcomes while remaining largely invisible. What disturbed Sophie most was the possibility that information itself had become a tool of power. According to insiders, she allegedly found indications that reports reaching senior royals were not always presented in their full context. Critical details may have been softened, delayed, or filtered entirely. Decisions that appeared straightforward suddenly looked far more complicated when viewed through this lens. If true, it meant that authority within the palace might not have rested solely with those holding official titles. Instead, influence may have quietly accumulated among individuals whose names rarely appeared in public discussions. As these revelations mounted, Sophie reportedly found herself confronting an increasingly uncomfortable reality. This was no longer about isolated mistakes or individual acts of poor judgment. The patterns she allegedly uncovered seemed deeply rooted, stretching back across multiple years and touching numerous aspects of palace operations. Every answer uncovered another question. Every explanation exposed another contradiction. The sense that she was witnessing something systemic rather than accidental grew stronger with each passing week. At the same time, whispers surrounding her private inquiries reportedly began spreading through royal circles. Nothing was said openly, yet subtle changes became impossible to ignore. Certain conversations reportedly stopped when she entered a room. Long-standing professional relationships became noticeably strained. Some officials appeared unusually eager to reassure others that everything was functioning normally. The harder people tried to project confidence, the more nervous the atmosphere seemed to become. Meanwhile, Sophie was allegedly struggling with the emotional weight of what she was uncovering. She had devoted years to supporting the monarchy and protecting its stability. The possibility that hidden rivalries and unseen agendas had been influencing important decisions struck at the very heart of her faith in the institution. There were moments when stepping away would have been easier. Ignoring the signs would have been safer. Yet each new discovery seemed to strengthen her conviction that turning away was no longer an option. Perhaps the most troubling question of all was also the simplest. If powerful insiders had indeed been shaping outcomes behind closed doors, who benefited most from those actions? The answer remained frustratingly elusive. Money, influence, reputation, and control all appeared woven into a complicated web of competing interests. Somewhere within that web, Sophie reportedly believed lay the truth she had been searching for. Yet even she could not have anticipated where that search was leading, because the evidence already uncovered was merely setting the stage for an even greater revelation. Yet the most shocking discovery was still ahead, and it would transform concern into outright confrontation. Then came the moment that reportedly changed the entire course of events. Sources claim Sophie obtained a collection of evidence so compelling that it left even seasoned insiders stunned. What she allegedly found appeared to connect years of questionable decisions into a single, deeply troubling narrative. Suddenly, whispers became accusations, doubts became certainty, and a quiet concern evolved into a crisis capable of shaking the monarchy's foundations. For months, Sophie had been following fragments of information that seemed disconnected on the surface. A questionable decision here, an unusual communication there, a record that did not align with official explanations. Individually, none of them appeared powerful enough to challenge the institution she had spent years protecting. But according to insiders, everything changed when those fragments finally began fitting together. What had once looked like isolated incidents allegedly revealed themselves as pieces of a much larger story, one that stretched across years and reached into areas of palace life few people ever questioned. Sources claim that Sophie eventually assembled a collection of records, private communications, internal reports, and supporting documents that appeared to establish a pattern impossible to ignore. For the first time, she reportedly saw the full picture rather than scattered pieces. The realization was staggering. The inconsistencies she had spent months investigating no longer looked accidental. The unexplained decisions no longer seemed unrelated. What emerged was an alleged chain of actions that connected influential individuals, sensitive decisions, and hidden agendas into a single narrative that threatened to rewrite everything she thought she understood. According to those familiar with the situation, Sophie was deeply shaken by what she found. The evidence did not bring satisfaction or vindication. Instead, it brought a profound sense of dread. For years, she had believed in the strength of the institution and the integrity of those entrusted with protecting it. Now she was allegedly confronting information that challenged those beliefs at their core. The emotional burden became almost impossible to escape. Every new detail appeared to reinforce the same troubling conclusion. Every attempt to find an innocent explanation seemed to collapse beneath the weight of the growing evidence. What made the situation even more difficult was the understanding that knowledge itself carried consequences. Sophie reportedly knew that once certain truths were acknowledged, there would be no easy way back. Exposing what she had uncovered could trigger a crisis unlike anything the palace had faced in years. Reputations could be destroyed. Alliances could fracture. Long-standing relationships might never recover. Yet remaining silent carried its own risks. The longer she withheld what she knew, the more she felt complicit in allowing troubling questions to remain unanswered. Trusted confidants allegedly urged caution. Some warned her to move slowly. Others encouraged her to think carefully about the wider consequences. They reminded her that institutions survive because stability is preserved, not because every uncomfortable truth is exposed. Yet there were also those who believed that silence would only deepen the problem. According to insiders, these conflicting voices created an intense internal battle. Sophie found herself trapped between two powerful obligations: loyalty to the monarchy and loyalty to what she believed was right. Meanwhile, subtle signs suggested that others were beginning to sense danger. Senior officials who once appeared confident reportedly became increasingly guarded. Discussions grew more tense. Certain individuals seemed unusually interested in discovering how much Sophie knew. The atmosphere surrounding palace operations allegedly changed almost overnight. What had once been quiet concern was now transforming into something far more volatile. As rumors quietly spread, uncertainty took hold. Nobody seemed certain what evidence existed, who might be implicated, or how far the revelations could reach. Yet the fear itself, became a powerful force. The possibility that years of carefully managed secrets could suddenly come into focus created an atmosphere of growing instability. Sophie had crossed a threshold from which there was no simple return. The questions were becoming sharper, the stakes were becoming higher, and the pressure was mounting from every direction. And when word began spreading that Sophie possessed evidence, panic reportedly started moving through the corridors of power. The palace has weathered scandals before, but insiders claim this felt different. Suddenly, conversations became guarded. Meetings were reportedly rearranged. Long-standing alliances appeared strained. Those who once felt untouchable allegedly found themselves facing uncomfortable questions. As rumors of Sophie's evidence spread, a climate of uncertainty took hold, creating an atmosphere where nobody knew what might be revealed next or who might be implicated. What had begun as a quiet investigation was now generating consequences far beyond Sophie's control. According to palace sources, the mere existence of the alleged evidence was enough to unsettle an institution built upon stability and discretion. Nobody outside a small circle supposedly knew exactly what Sophie possessed, yet that uncertainty became a force of its own. In environments where information is power, not knowing can be even more frightening than knowing. As speculation intensified, confidence reportedly gave way to anxiety, and anxiety quickly evolved into something much harder to contain. Insiders claim unusual activity began unfolding behind the scenes. Meetings were allegedly moved without explanation. Discussions that once followed predictable routines became increasingly restricted. Certain officials appeared unusually occupied, while others reportedly sought reassurances from colleagues about matters that had never previously caused concern. Each adjustment fueled fresh rumors. Each rumor deepened the sense that something significant was unfolding just beyond public view. At the center of the growing turmoil stood a question nobody seemed able to answer. What would Sophie do next? Some believed she was still weighing her options. Others feared she had already reached a decision. The uncertainty divided palace circles into competing camps. Loyal supporters argued that she would act only if absolutely necessary. Critics quietly questioned her motives. Neutral observers found themselves pulled into debates they never expected to have. The atmosphere became increasingly polarized, with every conversation revealing new tensions beneath the surface. According to reports, attempts at damage control allegedly began emerging almost immediately. Certain individuals worked to downplay concerns. Others reportedly suggested that rumors had been exaggerated. Yet those efforts often achieved the opposite effect. The harder some people tried to dismiss the situation, the more attention it attracted. Questions multiplied faster than answers. Suspicion spread further with every attempt to contain it. The strain was not limited to officials alone. Sources suggest that the growing controversy began affecting relationships throughout royal circles. Long-standing trust was reportedly tested as individuals wondered who knew what and when they knew it. Casual conversations became careful exchanges. Familiar alliances appeared increasingly fragile. For many, the emotional toll came not from proven facts but from uncertainty itself. Nobody wanted to believe that hidden conflicts could reach so deeply into the institution they served, yet the possibility could no longer be ignored. Meanwhile, outside observers were beginning to sense that something unusual was happening. Journalists reportedly started hearing whispers from multiple directions. Royal commentators noticed subtle changes in tone and behavior. Questions that once seemed speculative were gaining traction. The possibility that a major controversy could emerge was no longer confined to private discussions. It was slowly approaching public awareness, and that prospect intensified fears within palace walls. For Sophie, the pressure reportedly became relentless. Every passing day increased the stakes. Every rumor raised expectations. The evidence she allegedly possessed had transformed her from a respected insider into the central figure of a growing storm. There was no clear path forward and no easy resolution. Whatever decision she made would carry consequences, not only for herself but potentially for the entire institution. As uncertainty spread through royal circles, one fear began overshadowing all others. What if the allegations became public? What if years of carefully protected secrets suddenly faced scrutiny from the outside world? The thought alone reportedly sent shockwaves through influential circles. Yet even as people focused on that possibility, few were prepared for the decision Sophie was allegedly approaching. Because after months of silence, doubt, and mounting pressure, the story was about to take its most dramatic turn yet. But the greatest shock came when Sophie reportedly decided that silence was no longer an option. For years, Sophie was known as a stabilizing force within the royal family. That is why her alleged decision to move forward with the evidence stunned observers. This was no impulsive act. According to those close to the situation, it came after months, perhaps years of reflection, frustration, and growing concern. What followed would become one of the most dramatic turning points in recent royal history, leaving allies and critics equally speechless. By the time Sophie reportedly reached her decision, the struggle had already been raging within her for far longer than most people realized. The public saw a composed royal figure who continued fulfilling her responsibilities with dignity and discipline. Behind that calm exterior, however, insiders claim she was carrying a burden that grew heavier with every passing month. The evidence she allegedly possessed had forced her into a painful position. No matter what choice she made, someone would pay a price. The only question was who. According to sources close to the situation, Sophie spent countless months wrestling with competing loyalties. On one side stood the institution she had spent years defending. The monarchy had shaped much of her life and identity. It represented continuity, service, and duty. On the other side stood a growing conviction that certain truths could no longer remain hidden. Remaining silent might protect stability in the short term, but it could also allow deeper problems to continue unchecked. The conflict was not political, it was personal, and that made the decision infinitely more difficult. The pressure reportedly intensified from every direction. Trusted friends advised caution. Some believed exposing the allegations could trigger unnecessary turmoil. Others warned that challenging powerful figures rarely ends without consequences. At the same time, there were voices urging her not to retreat. They argued that difficult truths often demand uncomfortable choices. Each perspective carried weight. Each warning carried risk. Sophie allegedly found herself trapped between competing visions of loyalty, with no path that promised peace. Those closest to her reportedly witnessed the emotional toll this battle was taking. The uncertainty affected not only Sophie, but also those around her. Every new development brought fresh anxiety. Every rumor raised new questions. The possibility of confronting powerful individuals carried obvious risks, yet delaying action seemed to create a different kind of burden. The longer the situation remained unresolved, the harder it became to ignore the responsibility she felt. Eventually, according to insiders, a defining realization began to emerge. Sophie allegedly concluded that the issue had grown larger than any single individual. It was no longer about protecting reputations or avoiding controversy. It had become a matter of principle. The choice before her was no longer whether action would cause disruption. Disruption had already arrived. The real question was whether she was willing to face it directly. When word began circulating that Sophie intended to move forward, reactions were swift and emotional. Some within royal circles reportedly admired what they viewed as extraordinary courage. Others were stunned that someone so closely associated with stability would take such a dramatic step. Critics questioned her judgment. Supporters praised her determination. Yet regardless of opinion, one fact became impossible to ignore. Sophie had crossed a line from concern into action, and there was no reversing course. Outside palace walls, fascination grew rapidly. Observers who had rarely associated Sophie with controversy suddenly found themselves captivated by her role in an unfolding royal drama. The contrast was striking. A woman known for quiet loyalty was now being discussed as the central figure in a challenge to some of the most powerful forces within the institution. That transformation alone fueled endless speculation about what might happen next. As support and criticism collided, A growing belief began spreading through royal circles that change was becoming unavoidable. The questions raised by Sophie's alleged evidence were no longer fading into the background. They were moving closer to the center of palace life with every passing day. What had started as a private dilemma had become a public turning point, and its consequences were only beginning to unfold. The fallout was immediate, but no one was prepared for the divisions that would soon emerge throughout the palace. What began as a dispute involving palace officials quickly expanded into something far larger. Suddenly, members of the royal family reportedly found themselves caught between competing loyalties, conflicting accounts, and mounting pressure. Every conversation carried new consequences. Every alliance faced scrutiny. As tensions escalated, the question was no longer whether the palace could contain the controversy, it was whether the family itself could remain united through it. The moment Sophie's alleged actions moved from private concern to public discussion, the controversy reportedly entered an entirely new phase. What had once been viewed as an issue involving a handful of palace insiders was now affecting the very heart of the royal family. According to sources, senior royals found themselves confronting difficult questions that offered no easy answers. Some believed the allegations deserved serious attention regardless of the consequences. Others feared that pursuing the matter too aggressively could inflict lasting damage on the institution they had spent their lives protecting. The divide was not always visible, but it was increasingly impossible to ignore. Insiders claimed that reactions varied dramatically among different members of the royal circle. Some reportedly admired Sophie's willingness to challenge powerful interests, seeing her actions as an act of integrity rather than rebellion. Others allegedly viewed the situation through a different lens, worrying that the controversy threatened to create instability at a time when unity was needed most. Neither side could fully dismiss the other's concerns. That tension created an atmosphere where every discussion seemed charged with emotion and uncertainty. As the debate intensified, long-standing relationships reportedly began facing tests they had never encountered before. Individuals who had worked together for years suddenly found themselves on opposite sides of deeply sensitive issues. Trust, once assumed, now required reassurance. Conversations became more cautious. Private opinions became closely guarded. The controversy was no longer simply about evidence or allegations. It had become a question of belief, loyalty, and responsibility, forcing people to examine where they truly stood. At the same time, fears about public perception continued growing. The monarchy has always depended not only on tradition, but also on public confidence. According to royal insiders, concerns about reputation began influencing nearly every discussion. Some worried that continued silence would create the appearance of avoidance. Others feared that public acknowledgement could fuel even greater scrutiny. Every option seemed to carry risks. Every decision appeared capable of creating consequences that could extend far beyond the immediate crisis. Meanwhile, the possibility of additional revelations reportedly loomed over every conversation. What had already emerged was troubling enough, but many feared that Sophie's evidence represented only part of a much larger story. That uncertainty kept tensions elevated. No one seemed certain whether the worst had already surfaced or whether more damaging information remained hidden. The unanswered questions became as powerful as the allegations themselves. For the family, the emotional strain reportedly grew heavier with each passing day. Behind discussions about protocol and reputation were deeply personal relationships. People who cared about one another were now forced to navigate suspicion, disagreement, and competing interpretations of the truth. The emotional cost was significant. The pressure did not remain confined to official matters. It seeped into personal dynamics, creating fractures where stability once existed. As divisions widened, calls for accountability reportedly became louder. Some voices insisted that decisive action was necessary to restore confidence. Others argued that patience and caution remained essential. Yet regardless of perspective, one reality had become undeniable. The controversy could no longer be treated as a temporary problem waiting to disappear. It had become a defining challenge, demanding an answer. The pressure for action intensified from every direction. Palace officials faced scrutiny. Senior royals faced difficult choices. Sophie remained at the center of an unfolding storm whose consequences were still impossible to predict. And just when many believed the situation could not become more explosive, another revelation reportedly emerged. The alleged evidence may have started the crisis, but insiders claim the final revelation changed everything. As pressure mounted and questions intensified, attention reportedly shifted toward consequences. Who knew, who remained silent, and who allegedly helped keep the truth hidden? What followed was a dramatic reckoning that forced the palace to confront issues it had spent years avoiding, setting the stage for one of the most consequential moments in modern royal history. By this stage, the controversy had evolved far beyond its original scope. What began as questions surrounding palace officials had transformed into a full-scale examination of responsibility, accountability, and trust. According to insiders, the newest revelation did not merely add another layer to the story. It connected existing concerns in a way that made them impossible to dismiss. Suddenly, the focus shifted away from what had happened and toward who had allowed it to happen. That distinction changed everything. Within royal circles, conversations reportedly became more direct and far more uncomfortable. Individuals who had once avoided taking clear positions found themselves facing difficult choices. Silence, which had previously served as a shield, now attracted suspicion. Questions that had once been whispered privately were being asked more openly. Who possessed knowledge of the alleged actions? Who chose not to act? And perhaps most importantly, why? Those questions echoed through palace discussions, creating an atmosphere unlike anything the institution had experienced in years. According to sources, some of those connected to the controversy allegedly attempted to provide explanations for decisions that had come under scrutiny. Certain actions were reportedly defended as necessary efforts to protect stability. Others were framed as misunderstandings taken out of context. Yet those explanations struggled to calm growing concerns. The more answers emerged, the more new questions appeared. Every attempt to close the conversation seemed only to widen it further. At the same time, public interest reportedly reached extraordinary levels. Observers who had once viewed the controversy as another temporary royal dispute now saw something much larger unfolding. The story had become a debate about power, responsibility, and institutional integrity. Media scrutiny intensified. Commentators examined every development. Public curiosity transformed into sustained attention. The palace, long accustomed to managing difficult moments, suddenly faced an environment where every decision appeared subject to unprecedented examination. Behind closed doors, insiders claim emotions were running high. The controversy was no longer confined to official statements or procedural questions. It had become deeply personal. Long-standing relationships were reportedly strained by disagreements over how the situation should be handled. Trusted alliances faced pressure. Some believed transparency was the only path forward. Others feared that complete disclosure could create consequences impossible to control. The emotional weight of those disagreements reportedly touched nearly everyone involved. Through it all, Sophie increasingly emerged as the central figure in the unfolding drama. Supporters viewed her as someone willing to confront uncomfortable truths, regardless of personal cost. Critics questioned whether her actions had gone too far. Yet both sides agreed on one thing: her decision had fundamentally altered the course of events. A figure once known primarily for quiet service had become the catalyst for one of the most consequential debates the institution had faced in recent memory. Perhaps the most remarkable development was the challenge being posed to long-standing structures of authority. For years, certain assumptions had remained largely unquestioned. Now those assumptions were being examined with new intensity. Established power dynamics reportedly faced scrutiny. Traditional methods of handling sensitive issues appeared increasingly inadequate. The controversy had grown into a test not only of individuals but of the institution itself. As pressure continued building, the monarchy stood at a crossroads. The choices made in response to this crisis could shape public trust, internal relationships, and the institution's future for years to come. Accountability was being demanded. Explanations were being challenged. Change no longer felt like a distant possibility, but an immediate reality. Yet even amid the growing calls for answers, one question continued to overshadow every other. Yet the ultimate question remained unanswered. What would this mean for the future of the institution itself? Even after the Bombshell allegations, the story may be far from over. The evidence Sophie allegedly revealed has sparked questions that continue to echo throughout royal circles. Some believe it marks the beginning of a new era of accountability. Others fear it could unleash deeper divisions that have remained hidden for generations. One thing is certain: the consequences of this moment will not disappear quietly, and the next chapter may prove even more dramatic. As the dust slowly begins to settle, the full impact of Sophie's alleged actions remains impossible to measure. What started as a quiet concern reportedly evolved into one of the most significant internal crises the monarchy has faced in recent memory. The controversy has left a lasting mark, not because every question has been answered, but because so many questions remain unresolved. In many ways, the uncertainty itself has become part of the story. Long after the headlines fade, the issues raised by this extraordinary saga are likely to continue shaping conversations behind palace walls. At the heart of the debate lies a difficult question that has divided opinion from the very beginning. Is loyalty measured by protecting an institution from public scrutiny, or by confronting uncomfortable truths when they emerge? Supporters of Sophie argue that genuine loyalty sometimes requires courage rather than silence. Critics maintain that preserving stability should remain the highest priority. The tension between those two beliefs has become one of the defining themes of the controversy, and there is no indication that the debate will end anytime soon. According to observers, the palace itself may never be quite the same. The allegations have reportedly forced difficult discussions about transparency, responsibility, and the way sensitive matters are handled behind closed doors. Even if no immediate changes occur, the questions raised throughout this crisis are unlikely to disappear. Institutions often evolve not because they choose to, but because circumstances leave them no alternative. Whether that transformation is already underway remains one of the great unanswered mysteries. Public trust has also emerged as a central issue. For generations, the monarchy has relied on a delicate balance between tradition and confidence. Now, many people are reportedly watching closely to see how the institution responds. The choices made in the aftermath of this controversy could influence public perception for years to come. Every statement, every decision, and every response may carry greater significance than anyone initially expected. Yet perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the story is how much remains hidden. Despite months of speculation, reports, and allegations, many questions still lack definitive answers. Were all the relevant facts truly uncovered? Did every individual involved face scrutiny? Could additional information still emerge in the future? Those uncertainties continue fueling speculation, ensuring that the story remains very much alive. Meanwhile, Sophie's place within royal history appears to be evolving in real time. Once known primarily as a dependable and discreet member of the family, she now occupies a far more complex role in the public imagination. To some, she represents accountability. To others, she symbolizes disruption. Regardless of perspective, her alleged actions have ensured that her name will remain closely linked to one of the most dramatic chapters in modern royal history. And perhaps that is the most intriguing reality of all. This story does not feel finished, it feels paused. The controversy may have reached a turning point, but turning points are not endings. They are beginnings. New questions continue to emerge. New theories continue to circulate. New possibilities continue to take shape behind the scenes. Because if Sophie's bombshell evidence was only the beginning, the revelations still waiting behind palace walls could be even more extraordinary. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.